We're going to start off with the front court for the Eastern Conference All Stars, which, funnily enough, is arguably the three best players in the East in order, actually. So at number one, we have Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's averaging a ridiculous 32 points a game, and he's, again, just doing it every which way aside from making threes. He's averaging 6 assists. The turnovers are a little bit higher than you'd like to see with 3.5 per game, so he's not at that ideal 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, but he's getting 2.5 offensive rebounds a game, shooting an efficient 62% true shooting, and remains a very good defender. He is so versatile because he has the athletic abilities to switch on to smaller players, and he also is, maybe the strongest player in the league, definitely one of the strongest. So he can handle any post player trying to back him down. He's a very, very rare build for a player. So he is the top guy in the East. The guy that I think is number two in the East is Jason Tatum, who is kind of going under the radar, I would say, with his production this year, which is weird to say because his stats are great. But I think at this point, everybody's just accustomed to the Celtics being good. So it doesn't really feel like, you know, too much of a thing with him or the team as a whole doing well, especially with the Cavs having as good of a year as they are when they weren't expected to. So Tatum, though, he's averaging 27 points a game. That's awesome. He's averaging 5.5 assists to 2.8 turnovers, so you'll take that. He's such a good rebounder as well. Tatum, he's basically a center in the good ways, and then like a shooting guard in the good ways as well. I wouldn't say he's a point guard because, I still don't think his playmaking is quite at that level, but he can definitely run your offense and get everybody involved while also being, 27 point per game scorer. He's efficient. He's got a 59% true shooting. He's a really good defender. I love him. Just such an all around really good player. You know, definitely one of like the five or so best players in the league. Next, we have Karl Anthony Towns, who is averaging 25 points a game, which is really nice. I think he's always been that type of scorer. Maybe not like his first year, but basically since then, he's been capable of doing that. When Towns became the second option to Edwards, it became a little bit less, you know, get the ball to Towns in the post and we'll get him the three as well. It was kind of just like, him being a 3-point shooter, which I think he's the greatest big man shooter of all time, which, no offense to Dirk or anyone else that has a claim to that. Durant, I think, is a special case. He is not a big man in my eyes. I don't think he is for a lot of people, but if you count him as a big man, it would be Durant. But if we're just talking like guys that play the center and, you know, interchangeably also power forward, I would say Towns is the best shooter, which is definitely the case this year. He's making 2 threes a game and shooting 44% from three. That's incredible. He is a remarkable combination of stats because you have those two stats, and then he's getting 3 offensive rebounds a game. He's not much of a playmaking big. He has 3.5 assists to 2.5 turnovers. So he's not doing too much in that regard, but I don't think he's clueless there. I just wouldn't say that's a strength of his. He is very efficient with the 64% true shooting. The average for a center is 61%, so he's well above the average with, 3 percentage point lead over the average center. And I don't know if this is controversial to say because I think most people still think he's not a good defender, but Towns is a legitimately good defender. Like, he was talked down a lot when he was leaving Minnesota, and people were saying, like, he was hurting the defense. And, I don't agree with that. I think Towns, I'm not saying he's like one of the best defenders in the league. He's definitely not, but he's, big. Sometimes he's not the most aware, but he definitely, you know, has some things working in his favor, which for a player as good as he is, that's something that can't always be said. Again, with the top three guys, Giannis, Tatum, and Towns, that can be said for all the players. I would say I think Tatum's actually the best defender probably of the three, and then Giannis, and then Towns. But, you know, aside from those guys, in the East, the top guys are not actually very defensive minded in a lot of cases. And we're going to get into that just now with Jalen Brunson, who is the second Nick on this list. Brunson is averaging 26 points. He is super good at getting people involved without turning the ball over. He has 7.5 assists to 2.5 turnovers a game. That's incredible stuff. And he's also a premier 3-point shooter. I would like to see him get even more shots up from behind the line, but it's not like he's not getting, a fair amount up at the moment. He's getting 2.5 3 or making 2.5 threes rather a night and shooting 40% from 3. That's great. He is also rather efficient. He is 61% true shooting. The average. So I label players as bigs or smalls, which I do realize is a bit, too lumped together, but I'm kind of lazy and I just find that easier to do. So I look at the average for small forwards for small players and the average for centers for, bigs. And the average small forward true shooting percentage is 57%. So Brunson 4 percentage points above that. He is a really poor defender. And, I will admit for him, though, a chunk of that just is he doesn't have the physical traits. Like, he's not very athletically gifted rather, in basically any facet, aside from the fact he's pretty strong, I would say. Like, he's small, but he's, pretty compact and built well. So he does have that going for him, but he's not, like super fast or, you know, just blessed in any way that is helpful for a defender beside the strength element. So that does hold him back. But I also just think for the most part, he's not taking it super seriously, which is funny with Thibodeau being their coach. But either way, Brunson, the only thing you can hold against him is the defense. But, that's true for a lot of players. So I'm not going to specifically key on that for him. It's just something to note. A very similar player is Damian Lillard, who has very similar statistical profiles to Brunson, as Brunson was averaging 26 points. Lillard also averaging 26 points. Lillard is averaging a half of a turnover more than Brunson is, but they're both averaging 7.5 assists. Lillard is shooting 2 percentage points worse from 3, but he's making an additional 1.2 per game. And then true shooting wise, Lillard is 1 percentage point more efficient. So, there's definitely some give and take. The Defense for Lillard, I think, is worse than it is for Brunson, but I wouldn't say it's much of a difference. It's just that's kind of my take on it. That's what the stats that I use say. So it's, you know, it's close either way. Another player that is kind of in the same vein, but is a little bit statistically different, is Tyrese Maxey, who is putting up 28 points a game. So he's putting up the most out of any East All Star aside from Giannis. But he's a bit less of a playmaker than the two aforementioned point guards, as Maxey's averaging 6 compared to the 7.5 for Lillard and Brunson. Maxey is averaging 2.5 turnovers, so better than Lillard, but worse than Brunson. Maxey is the worst 3-point shooter, I would say, of the three, but he's still a very good one. He makes 3.3 a game and shoots 35% from three. So he's making a lot, but that's mainly because he's taking a lot of threes. 35% from three on a high volume like that is not bad, but he's just not particularly efficient. So there's that, and the lack of efficiency is true for his true shooting percentage as a whole as well. He's shooting exactly average for a small at 57%. Like with Brunson and Lillard, Maxey is a poor defender, perhaps the worst of the three, as he has the worst defensive LeBron out of any of the three. So, there are definitely things that go against Maxey, but at the end of the day, 28 points is a nice, thing in his favor. Franz Wagner is a great story. He, I think, was, backed by a lot of smart people and backed by a lot of analytics as well. And he is just, bursting onto the scene this year with Banchero being out as well. That's been, something that's really helped Wagner solidify himself. So Wagner is averaging 25 points. He can't really shoot the three, but he's doing basically everything else aside from that. He's getting 1 offensive rebound, 5 assists to 2.3 turnovers. We'll take that. He is, again, dead average as a true shooting percentage is concerned. And he's a solid defender. He can switch a lot of positions and has good intensity in that regard. So he is a very well-rounded player. Donovan Mitchell is a very interesting player because he has conceded a fair amount of his scoring this season. Yes, you would love for him to, average 30 points. That would be great. But if it means getting Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, etc., involved, there is, I think, an allure to Mitchell not always getting as many shots up. The one thing that confuses me a bit is you figure he's putting up less points, so the efficiency should rise. That hasn't been the case too much. He's 59% true shooting, so above average, but it's not like it's something remarkable. And I guess he's still just being the tough shot maker a lot of the time for the Cavs, so that's something that I guess makes it make sense. But overall, he is still a very sound player. He's making 3.6 threes a game, shooting 39% from three. That's great. 5 assists to 2 turnovers. You'll take that. And then with the defense, I think he's pretty all right. I think there's definitely times where, if he's engaged at the end of the game, he can be a little bit above average, even though he's not very tall, but he does have a great wingspan, so that helps. And during the most or like the greater portion of the game, I think he's kind of just whatever. So, you'll take that for a star player. And next we have Cade Cunningham, who is finally healthy for a good chunk of the year, which is great to see. Putting up 25 points. I'm not in love with his playmaking this year, as crazy as that is to say, because he is averaging 9.5 assists a game. But he's also averaging 4.5 turnovers a game, which, yes, that is the, greater than 2-to-1 ratio. But 4.5 turnovers is a bit steep. So I would like it if he could cut that down, even if it means, losing some assist. I just would like to see him be a little bit more careful with the ball. He is an all right 3-point shooter, 2 threes made per game, 35%. That's kind of, whatever, I think, for a guard these days. He's not efficient, though, as a whole. 55% true shooting. That's below the 57% average. So he's not, lighting the world on fire in all ways, but he is definitely showing a ton of promise. And I think he deserves to be an all-star for just, this season alone. It's not like, I'm hyped for him and just going to put him in the all-star because I like that. No, I think he's justified. LaMelo Ball is, I think, pretty similar to Cunningham. They are putting up very similar points, 25.5 versus 27.5. So, props to Ball for that. 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio for Ball, 7.2 versus 3.6 for turnovers. They both get an offensive rebound a game. They both shoot 35% roughly from 3. Ball shoots 34%. But the difference is Ball is getting up a lot more threes. He's making 4 a game, so double roughly what Cunningham is making. But, still keeping that efficiency roughly where Cunningham is. So I like Ball, I think, a little bit more in that sense. But as a total package, I think I like Cunningham more. Cunningham is a much better defender than Ball. Ball is rather poor. Cunningham, I wouldn't say he's great on defense, but I don't think he's horrendous. And I think he has the potential to be better moving forward because he is pretty big for the position. And I don't know what his wingspan actually is, but I think that, being tall, you would imagine the wingspan corresponds to that a bit. So, yeah, Cunningham, I think, is, I would take him moving forward, but if you get Ball as your franchise player moving forward, I don't think that's a bad consolation prize either. Ball, though, shooting 54% true shooting, that's pretty bad. And now for a total clash of styles, we have Evan Mobley. Mobley is averaging 18.5 points a game, compared to LaMelo Ball averaging 27.5. That's just a nice 9-point difference. So, why is Mobley here? The things he brings to the game, aside from scoring, which his scoring is still good. I'll take 18.5 points all day. But what he brings aside from that is so valuable. He's averaging 2 offensive rebounds a game. He's making his threes. He's not taking very many, but making 1 a game at 38%. I would like to see that get up a little bit, and him build his confidence even more, which I think will happen with time. I don't want to say that that's a necessity right now. I don't want to rush him, but I do want to see that progression because I think, that's like what's exactly needed for the Cavaliers, because with Jared Allen, there is, you know, some redundancy in offensive skill sets for those players where, you know, they're doing a lot of their action in the post, just near the basket. And, if Mobley can stretch things out a little bit with that 3-point shooting, that fit becomes a lot better. And man, that is a really good defensive duo, because Mobley is, I don't know where I'd rank him as far as best defenders in the league go, but he's definitely one of the premier defenders. And basically every number I could find on defensive stats for Mobley was just in love with him. So, it's not just a me thing, it's backed by statistics. So, Mobley, he is very valuable. 64% true shooting as well, which, I don't consider him a big because he's not the center for the Cavs. So he's compared to small forwards, which is a little bit unfair. He's a power forward, but whatever. It's not much of a difference between small forwards and power forwards. Mobley is 64% true shooting compared to 57% true shooting for the average. This dude is really efficient, and he is really, bursting on the scene. Another guy that's starting to reach his full potential is Tyler Hero, who's putting up 24 points a game and is doing so as a pretty solid playmaker as well, with 5.5 assists to 2.5 turnovers a game. But what really stands out for him is he's making 3.7 threes a game on 38% shooting. So he is one of the better 3-point shot makers in the league. And he's also rather efficient from the court as a whole, as he's 61% true shooting. The only thing that works against him is that he's not a good defender, but if he's able to take his scoring up a notch as he progresses further in his career, or just, refines his defense a bit, he could really be a great asset for the Heat. And he already is, but he could just be climbing up the list of best players in the NBA with a little bit more refinement. Another player that is doing something when it seemed like they might have been starting to stagnate is Darius Garland. He's averaging 22 points a game, 6.5 assists to 2.5 turnovers is really nice. And he's also a great 3-point shooter, making 3 a game on 43% from 3. Great true shooting percentage at 63%. He's also not a good defender. I don't think that's going to change because he's a little bit small for the position, but I'll take a guy that's fantastic from 3 and can put up 20 plus points a game as a good playmaker, even if he can't, be the greatest defender. That's a very valuable piece to the team right there. And speaking of valuable pieces to the team, we have Kristaps Porzingis, who is putting up 19 points a game, so that's pretty good. And he's doing so as a really nice 3-point shooter. Again, that's a resounding theme throughout this video. 2.5 threes made, 41% from 3, 1.5 offensive rebounds. He's a really good defender. He can switch 1 through 5 pretty comfortably. Not the greatest against like the shifty point guards of the world, but he can, hold his own. And he's great in the paint. He patrols it very nicely. He has a 62% true shooting percentage, which is 1 percentage point higher than the average, so that's pretty good. And overall, he is a really nice piece for the Celtics, and I think he is, an underrated glue guy for them. I think most people kind of just get him lost in the shuffle, but he's actually a really good contributor to what they do. So I think he's a really, really nice player for them. Those are my thoughts on the Eastern Conference All-Stars. Be sure to let me know what yours are in the comment section. And also be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content.